I think the fact that the American people are confused, and the fact that the Congress seems uncertain and the international community is not supportive is a reflection of the fact that the so-called commander-in-chief has not been acting as a commander-in-chief. He's not provided leadership.
Because the specter of the Iraq invasion haunts everything involving the debate to launch airstrikes in Syria, I decided to ask Secretary of State John Kerry what it's like to have the master architects of a war based on lies criticize him and the president. But I began by asking what it's like to be the person who is the leading spokesperson out front for an attack on Syria. You have made this case more strenuously, passionately, more out front than anyone else in the administration, I think it's fair to say. Given the experience you had in Vietnam and given the experience of the Iraq War, how do you feel about being the public face of this intervention?
I feel confident that what I am doing is informed by my own lessons of war and informed by my opposition to war, but informed also by my years of supporting certain military actions when they're important to the security of our nation. I believe this is important to the security of our country. I believe that if we don't do this, that we will have sent a horrendous message of permission to a man who has already shown his willingness to use weapons of mass destruction. I believe that if we don't stand up, our friends in the region, Jordan, will be more fragile, potentially at risk. Israel will suffer the greater potentiality of these weapons falling into the hands of Hezbollah, that Iran will feel emboldened. Iran, whom we are already in a major confrontation with over the potential that they may be developing a nuclear weapon. Iran will read this, and they could read it in the wrong way, which could create an even more dangerous confrontation down the road. So, Chris, you know, I've thought a lot about this. I know the lessons of war. I don't believe this is taking America to war. I believe this is enforcing a very limited military action, not going to war, that will, in fact, stand up for the notion that you should not use chemical weapons, something we fought. And by the way, we've protected our troops with this prohibition. Yeah. In World War II, in Vietnam, in Korea, in both Iraq wars. People didn't dare use chemical weapons against our troops because they know there is a prohibition, and that would unleash even greater wrath of our nation. We need to stand up for that same principle now.
In terms of the lessons, and because the American public is so informed by these last 12 years, Donald Rumsfeld has said your leadership on this issue, the president's leadership, has been feckless. You have seen architects of the Iraq War from the Bush administration coming out and criticizing the administration, criticizing the policy. How do you respond to seeing the architects of the Iraq War come and criticize you personally, criticize the president?
Well, I don't pay any. It just doesn't make a difference to me, because they're so discredited by their own judgments that it's hard to see that they have a judgment today that is relevant to this. I'll listen to people whose judgment I clearly trust and respect, but with respect to this particular moment, from the moment that I have been sworn into office, I've been working with our allies, working with the opposition to define the ways in which we can guarantee that weapons are not going to the worst actors out there, the ways in which we can guarantee that the future of Syria will be a democratic future, but also to guarantee that we are not presenting to the American people the same shoddy intelligence that was presented to the American people back in Iraq, that we do not make that mistake, that we will not put American boots on the ground, we will not take over a war that is a civil war in which the United States clearly has no business being directly involved.
Can I ask about
We're not going to do that.
Can you unilaterally declare that you're not taking responsibility for civil war when the rebels on the ground are going to see this American intervention as possibly a door opening to further intervention, and that is going to affect the way they conduct themselves?
We have made it crystal clear to them. We make it crystal clear now in every statement that we have made. This action has nothing to do with engaging directly in Syria's civil war on one side or the other. It has to do with enforcing a norm of international behavior that has protected people against chemical weapons. And it is one of the things, chemical, biological, nuclear warfare. We have decided as a world we are going to protect people against those weapons, and this measure that we're asking the Congress to authorize will have a profound impact on the judgment of the North Koreans and the Iranians and others as to whether or not the United States will stand up for the policies that it adopts, and whether or not the United States, when it says something, means what it says.
Is the president calling members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, to get them to vote yes on this?
The president will be directly communicating to the members of Congress, the vice president. We are all engaged in trying to define with clarity what this is, but also, Chris, what it is not. It is not Iraq. It is not Afghanistan. It is not even Libya. There will be no American boots on the ground. We are not sliding through a back door into a war. We're not going to war. We're taking a limited military action to enforce a very important principle.
Will the president address the American people to make that case himself?
I am confident the president will address the American people.
Finally, your colleague and friend and the man who took over your seat, Ed Markey, yesterday voted present. He was so apparently unpersuaded by the testimony you gave in front of that committee. What is your reaction to Ed Markey voting present?
Well, that's not what Ed told me. Ed told me that he felt that he hadn't had a chance to read the intelligence report in its entirety. He didn't want to read the public version. He wanted to read the full version. So we will talk again, and my hope is that when he feels fully informed, that he'll make the right decision.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.